again, composer Zach Heyde here. Hope you're all doing well. And today I am very excited. I'm really excited to do a little mock-up and imitation of a piece from Gareth Coker's Ori and the Blind Forest soundtrack. Now this is from the second one, Will of the Wisps, which is just freaking incredible, has been a huge inspiration for me and other composers, and we're working on the piece Approaching the Ruins. This piece just literally floored me. It took my breath away when I first heard it. There's some incredible music in the whole soundtrack, but this one in particular I really liked. Now, if you're new to this channel or this series, the point of these videos is basically to learn what we can from the original pieces and then imitate them and make our own piece. So we're gonna listen to it, analyze it, and then do kind of a spin-off of that piece to learn the kind of orchestration techniques that Gareth Coker used. If you enjoy this video and you find it helpful, you can leave a like and subscribe for more. All right, now we're gonna work with the first like 20 to 30 seconds of this for reference, so let's just give it a listen and I'll chat over it. The ornamentations on the winds are so cool. All right, now we may just start with that, but I'm also just gonna play a little bit forward in case we decide to go a little farther in our piece. That's definitely as far as we'll get, even though the whole piece is incredible. So predominantly, it's pretty string dominant with lots of string sustains. We also have some ambient pads that we're going to explore a little bit. Some very, very light percussion just for pulse, and the whole piece starts off with what sounds to me like a duduk, which is an where is it from actually? Which is an Armenian wind instrument that kind of sounds a little bit like bassoon or English horn. It has this very somber kind of mournful quality to it, which is really, really useful as a composer. Harmonically, there's actually nothing too crazy about this. We're working with a specific kind of color, which is leaning on the 6th scale degree. So we're in a major key, B major, but we're kind of really landing and pushing into this G. And then we're going into this A, which is these very interesting tone colors. It kind of gives it this like slightly off-kilter feel, sort of Middle Eastern sounding. Very, very interesting. And then later in the piece we got this. So our color is basically working with this, you know, major with a flat 6 and a flat 7. That's the essential color we're working with. Now, to start, let's create our own little piano sketch that's similar to this piece. So, and we're gonna kind of lean into the same thing. So let's try, it's gonna be pretty darn similar, I think, if we do it. So let's do. So let's try something like that. I'm gonna do 2 piano sketches, one for just the chords. Try that. We're straying a little bit, but that's okay. Okay, now let's get some sort of a cyclical thing. So I'm actually working in groupings of 3 because I thought it'd be more interesting than what I had planned originally. So let's now do a melody. So we'll do like... That's all we're going to have time to get to, I think, with the orchestration and whatnot. So I'm trying to really lean into some of the dissonances of this because that's some quality that I noticed that made this piece really cool. Landing in on some of the dissonances, but adjusting the chords as necessary. So this is a good starting point. Now let's maybe start with, let's first grab that little opening Deduk phrase. I think for my sake, for the mock-up, I'm going to use an English horn instead because I think it'll sound better. This is something that those solo lines are so much better with live players, but I'm going to use an English horn instead. In fact, let's even see what bassoon would sound like. Let's try English horn. I like that the best. Okay. Okay, now the strings are going to pick up from there. Okay. Now I just like to personally, I like to quantize stuff just because that's how I am. And a little cleanup here with the breath controller that I'm using to control modulation. Okay. Now let's grab the strings for the rest of the melody here. Here we go. Okay, I think that'll work. So I actually swapped lines, if you noticed, halfway through. And that's because I actually want to have, this da 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 get taken by some of the mid strings to kind of create like a counterpoint as the original melody comes up. So right around here. So let's work on that part next. Let's try. Now our piece is just going to kind of cut off abruptly because we're just not going to continue it. Okay. We're going to also need to throw in some of those portamentos. That's a kind of like slidey strings. That's something we're going to incorporate a little bit later. Let's get the violins in octaves, perhaps. I think this actually needs to go up an octave, doesn't it? I think so. So I'm kind of improvising a little bit because I want to have a little bit of this clash as the counterpoint's going. I don't really like this little change I did here, though. This is great. have it keep going. And just land on this note. Okay, so if we hear this without the piano, we'll really hear what kind of how this is working. Let's change this inner line. Maybe this. No, I like them sticking together, actually. Okay, now let's listen for reference on where the lower strings move in the second half. Sounds like the Duduk continues through that second half. So let's actually have it continue to double the melody. And then it cuts there. Something like that, okay? Now here comes the really fun part. We're gonna have these, the bass and the cello in separated by an octave, doing these kind of swells. And when do they actually start? Right off the bat, so right in the beginning. So I think our chord goes G? A. Okay. So let's just do these kind of really intense swells. Okay. Always have to catch my breath after I do the string lines. Okay, so you notice I've got really, really exaggerated swells going on here. Now I think I'm going to make them legato just because. Now we're going to need some support for the harmony because the harmony is kind of empty throughout the beginning section. But you'll notice I think there's some violas active in the first part. Might actually even be a second cello. So let's have the second cello play these to support. Now it's not changing, it's keeping a constant B throughout no matter what. So it's keeping the root. now let's see what happens in this second half. So basically joins the counterpoint. So if we have it active, it's going to join the counterpoint in some way. So let's take a look at where our melody is. So everything's kind of here. The counterpoint hasn't really started. Let's have it start with the basses and kind of trail out. So all the independent lines in the middle, I'm having them trying to move in a scalar way so that they feel connected to themselves, but also have a little bit of a presence, just not one that's too strong that it's overwhelming anything. Cool. All right, so this is great for the strings. So now let's actually move on to some of the ambiences and then some of the percussion at the end. So the ambience is just, basically setting our texture. You can hear it most of the beginning. We have some real, very sparkly stuff. It's going to be interesting to figure out how to imitate that. Let's maybe work with something organic and then use that as a way to get into something a bit more ambient. So let's start with a dulcimer. Okay, now we're going to really experiment with this so we can get something we like. So I'm going to use a plugin called Valhalla's Shimmer. I'm going to put the mix on 100%. And let's make it a stereo. So this isn't too bad. It's kind of interesting. But I want no diffusion. This is sounding better. Let's use this in combination with other stuff. So let's try and use this in combination with other elements. In fact, that's pretty good, but I want to throw in another reverb because I want this to be very obscured sounding. So let's throw in the Valhalla Room. With a nice long decay. Yeah, that's better. And now let's really exaggerate the high end. Really sparkly. I think I like that because we're going to use some of the other pads to create the middle space. Now, I don't think we're going to use it later. So we'll end it there. Okay, now let's get some other kind of a pad going. Something a bit more mid-range and less character, so a bit more subtle. So I'm going to use Omnisphere. I have a couple preloaded pads built in here. I have a feeling that one of these will probably work just fine. It's like this has so much character to it that it's distracting. So let's try something a little bit less prominent. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a pad like this and I'll just try and simplify it. So I'll see what the main elements are. This could work. Just want something, you know, with a little bit of movement and character, but not too crazy. So let's try that. Very subtle. And this is a pad that can go through the whole piece. So what I will usually do is I'll grab it through the duration. I'll extend the length of the pad, and then I'll just bounce it so I can play with it if I need to. I'm also going to lower the volume of the dulcimer one. And lower this one a little bit. Very, 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 very subtle stuff. Okay, lastly, I want to get one more pad that is a bit more tonal. So I'm going to experiment until I find a couple. I probably have a custom one that I could use. This is a custom pad I made for my album Frostfell. I like it, but I don't want the high end. So let's try something like this. I think that will work just fine. And we're just going to keep it on the root note, just to keep it kind of glued together. Again, I'm just going to bounce it. We're also going to play with the mix at the very end because a lot of Gareth Coker stuff is very deeply saturated in reverb. So we're going to play with that a little at the end. The last thing I want to add in here is the percussion. Also, we're going to add in a sub bass because I think that's going to really help accent kind of what the basses are doing. You see, we have a nice orchestral bass right now, but we need something even more like deep. So we're going to use a sub bass. This is a very common technique in film music. If you have headphones, you'll probably be able to hear this. If not, you probably won't. And what we're going to do is we're going to ride the volume to match what's going on in our other basses. Now I want this even bassier, believe it or not. So we're gonna amp this up a little bit. And I'm gonna take the EQ. I don't like this frequency. I also have a plugin I can use. This is gonna make it like super bassy, called Low Ender. That was actually recommended to me by Gareth. Oh! That's bassy. All right. That's disgusting. Okay, we're going to use that. Now, if it's going to be that loud, we're going to really need to duck this back because this is going to be way too intense. So let's make the volume nice and quiet. Okay, now we're going to use some volume automation. Very, very subtle. Again, really subtle touch. If you don't have headphones on, I don't even think you'll hear that. But with headphones, it makes a difference, and it's really, just has some nice oomph to it. Okay, lastly, let's get in some of the percussive, like, kind of shakers. We also have this nice little guitar-sounding instrument going on throughout that I'd like to get as well. So let's see if we can find something similar to that. I'm going to use maybe a tambora. And I believe I have one that is just the sustain. Let's try that. Again, really subtle. Okay, I was doing a little EQing while I was playing because this line was very straightforward, so I could kind of tweak while I go. Okay, just trying to kind of make it more even sounding. Okay, lastly, a little percussion, and then we can do our final mixing with the reverb. Okay, we basically just want... Also, I'm going to pan this tambora to the left a little. Okay, so we just want some light shakers. So let's play around and see what we got. So those are fine. That works well. I'm going to see if there is something a little bit more interesting, like has a little bit more flavor to it. So let's see what this one sounds like. We've got a couple shakers in here. That one. I like that one. Still needs a little bit more reverb. So let's give it a little bit more space in here. You can get really picky about this stuff. At the end of the day, though, always just use your ear. I think this one, in combination with this one, could work, potentially. So let's just try this. Okay, for expedience, we're just gonna copy paste that. Okay, and lastly, let's add in the shakers just doing a half pulse. So that helps to just accent a little bit more. Something real subtle. Maybe even pan them a little for a little bit of that extra effect. Cool. All right, so this is sounding good. So let's now take the strings. Actually, let's also take the English horn as well. Let's... lot more reverb. And more brightness. I'm even gonna change the mic position because this is something that is more soloistic. So let's grab the close mics. And more compression. Okay, now let's get those portamentos. This is where it's really gonna make it. We want all these portamentos. That's the really kind of slidey effect that you get. Even more. Now, if you overdo it, it can be a little too much. So let's just, let's default this to being not portamento and grab it on, figure out where we want it. So I'm looking at the line and deciding where I want the portamentos. Okay, and then let's look at the inner lines. And this one. No right answers for this, just deciding arbitrarily. Now the portamentos take a little longer than the normal attacks to come in. So we're gonna slide them all slightly to the left, so that they activate a little bit earlier. Great, okay, now lastly, let's take the long violins and we're gonna add a lot more reverb to them. So let's just solo these out. Okay, make sure our reverb is actually soloed in here so we can hear it. Even more. I want it drenched. Want more support on this part too. So let's have the English horn come back in. And let's also have the violin 1 at this point split in octaves. So I'm just gonna literally take this and just, I'll just re-record it an octave lower. Okay, Now, the last thing I'm going to add, this is not in Gareth's piece, but it's always good to just try and write as if you're composing this piece. So if you want to take liberties, then go for it. Last thing I want to add are maybe some sub bass hits, just booms. Just subtly every now and again. Don't want to overdo it. But I think that's what I would add to this piece, just for a little bit of pulse. And potentially, unless it's too much, I like to use this these days. This is just a low sub kick that I added recent in my template. It's kind of contemporary sounding, like hip hop tracks. But sometimes I like to layer it, and it can just add a nice little punch. So like we'll add it, I think not at this part. Let's see, might be too much. Let's see. This is kind of the way I like to write this stuff. Okay, and we'll add little accents of bass hits. Skip this one. Okay, and then maybe just some mid-range drums. So, because we don't want to crowd up the bass frequency is already like all over the place. Okay, double that with some real taikos. Lower. Okay, but dynamically a lot quieter. So bring that way down. Change the mics. Let's go for something a little bit more boomy. There we go. And let's make sure all the bass is EQ'd out. I don't want any bass in this. Don't want as much treble either. One more little experiment. Maybe a little bit of close mics. Pretty subtle. Let's fade out the shaker here. Beautiful. All right, now let's listen to the final thing. So again, we just kind of use this for reference and then created our own piece based off of it. It's a great, great way to learn how to compose like other composers, but then how to integrate those ideas that you like into your own style. So here is the final result. And if you're interested, the MIDI for this, like all of my other MIDI, is going to be available on my Patreon, where you can support me there if you'd like to. I'll make this available so you can integrate it into your own template or study it on your own if you're interested. So there you have it. I hope you found this content helpful. If you did, you can leave a like and subscribe if you want more. I do these pretty regularly now. And if you want to support me, you can check out my Patreon, like I said, or you could also buy me a coffee in the video description. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.